Lucy. Well, we knew that. We want to thank Kim Lucy, who has been one of our steadfast sponsors. For 35 years as a certified financial planner, she's been helping her clients to prepare for the unexpected. She's a steadfast advocate for her clients. She helps them to find clarity and confidence in this ever-changing climate where longevity is something we all have to plan for these days, right? So this also requires the need for an advocate. And that's what I love about what Kim does. She really advocates for her clients. She helps them to navigate a very stressful situation. And she does that and helps them to become a blessing in the lives of those they love. It's a beautiful thing. She leads her practice with integrity, having experienced many of life's challenges that her clients face. So she really understands where you're coming from. She helps her clients, in the end, she helps her clients to thrive and not just survive. So thank you, Kim Lucy, certified financial planner from Synthesis Wealth. That's very hard to say, Kim. Anyway, and another sponsor of ours is Cal Thomas from Sandler Training. Cal is the president of Sandler Training in Morristown, a sales management and customer service training and coaching organization. Interestingly, and not so coincidentally, Anthony, myself, Rachel, and our team have all participated in Sandler Training, and it has helped us to become really better communicators and solution providers, because it's really not about sales. It's about diagnosing and seeing if you have a solution that wins for everyone. And that's what I've loved about the Sandler process. It's about creating a situation that where everyone wins. So we're delighted to have Cal as one of our sponsors. In addition to sales training, Cal spends a lot of time with leaders of teams and organizations to build the management and leadership skills they need to retain and manage valuable employees, which we know is not an easy thing today. And speaking of Cal, during our July Business Growth Roundtable, today we're talking about artificial intelligence. Well, next month, you'll want to register right now. Kelly, that's your cue to put the registration link in the chat. You'll want to register now for our July Roundtable, where Cal and his colleague, Jordan Ledween, hope I got that right, Cal, will be talking about artificial intelligence specific to our selling process. And this is something that's just moving so quickly, and I find it super exciting. So join us next month as well. So with that, let me hand it to my fabulous co-host, Rachel Durkin.
Thank you, Donna. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Rachel Durkin. I'm with Paradigm Marketing and Design. We are a web marketing, branding, and sales enablement agency that customizes and working with clients with a complex sale. So if you require a sales team and a conversation to close a deal, we can help your sales team build a marketing to sales infrastructure that will increase the number of qualified meetings your team is having and shorten their sales cycle. Now, I am so excited to introduce our speaker today. She is a member of my WPO group. I'm so thankful she agreed to speak here at our little roundtable, because she has been on world stages and is just phenomenal. So I'm going to read her bio, but there's so much more I could say about her. Esther is the founder and chief operating officer of Raare Solutions, an award-winning leader in CRM and marketing operations. Esther partners with clients and agencies to bring brand engagement to life with compelling, engaging, omni-channel interactions. Esther is recognized as a leading expert in marketing operations, entrepreneurship, diversity, and customer experience strategy. She is a speaker at technical and business conferences, author of multiple articles, and a frequent podcast guest. She and her company are recognized for excellence by journals such as MarTech, Outlook, and Enterprise World, Forbes, NJ Biz, and is a 2020 Enterprising Women Woman of the Year. Esther also serves on the board of trustees for Centenary University and is active in business and charity groups. She's also just a simply wonderful person and has a lot of knowledge. So buckle up. Thank you, Esther, for being here.
Thank you very, very much for having me. I'm going to share my screen here, and I truly, truly appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody here today. I wanted to also, I will not introduce myself, but I would like to first thank Paradigm Marketing, Rachel, Donna, C3 Workplace, and Sandler and Synthesis, and NJBIA for this time to spend with you today. So, as was stated, I'm the CEO and founder of Raare Solutions. My experience is in marketing operations, the data side of marketing, and I've been speaking about AI for the last couple of years. So, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about first of all some general concepts, what it is, what it is not. We're going to talk about the classes and uses of various AI forms and their tools. We're going to talk about some considerations when looking at AI, crafting an AI policy in your business, and then share some resources. So, got a lot of information, a lot to unpack. So let's get to it. So, what is AI today? It is a tool for decision making. So, it can analyze vast amounts of data quickly and provide insights, forecasts, and recommendations. That's why AI is being used in industries and organizations to sift through massive quantities of data. It is also an engine for automation. From chatbots to process automation, AI can handle repetitive tasks and free up people for more strategic endeavors. You're seeing this increasingly in customer service in the form of chatbots. It is also a source for personalized content. So AI can be used to tailor product recommendations, marketing messages, customer experiences based on individual preferences. So as an example, recently I was speaking at a conference in Prague, and I had to stop over in Zurich for about 8 hours. So I had a conversation with ChatGPT to discuss what was going to be my itinerary of things to do for 8 hours in Zurich. So it was and it was really interesting. It gave me some really great recommendations. It didn't quite take into consideration jet lag, but it was still incredibly valuable. It is also a platform for predictive analysis. So they can forecast trends, identify consumer behavior, and even potential business risks. And that's where the role that we use AI for becomes really critical. AI uses every data point it can consume, and unfortunately, that introduces first of all inaccuracies and also introduces bias. And is infused in everything from law enforcement to insurance to finance. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and that is why it's important to use AI correctly and understand its uses, understand its risks, and make sure that there is provenance and governance when using AI in any of your business operations. It's also a pathway to cost efficiency. So when deployed correctly, AI can reduce costs by automating tasks and making operations more efficient. So a June 2023 report by McKinsey last year believes that current generative AI has the ability to automate work activities and absorb 60 to 70% of employees' time today. Now, that does not mean that 60 to 70% of jobs are going to go poof. They're not going to go. Humans are very, very critical to the process. But this means an opportunity for retraining and redeploying. So as an example, one of my clients is a company called Access Global, and they worked on a project for an insurance company where they were able to reduce the number of high volume calls by 40% by using AI in chat to get rid of the really basic questions that everybody asks, the same 150 questions. And their customer service people were able to do more interesting things and work on better activities, and it helped with retention. So the customers were satisfied, the employees were satisfied, everybody was happy. That's a really good example of cost efficiency and opportunity. It is constantly evolving and constantly improving. Unlike static software, AI systems can improve over time as they process more and more data. We see this in just the last year. Generative AI has exploded, right? You're seeing all sorts of breathtaking changes in the way that generative AI can create images, music, documents, contracts, everything. People are having full-on conversations with ChatGPT, the elderly, the people who are shut in, commuters. It is beginning to create this environment of more and more sophisticated human-like interactions. And it's learning more and more each time, which is very, very important. We'll talk about the risks with that soon. It is also an enhancement of the mind in a way. It can complement human skills and recognizing patterns in data that might be just way too vast for us to see and analyze manually. This is not hippy-dippy stuff, right? It is scientific opportunity and cultural opportunity. AI engines are being built to address all of them, from discoveries in medicine to understanding the universe. All the images and songs and stories, all of these things are enhancing all of us, all of our lives. But let's talk about what it is not. It's not a silver bullet. It's not a one size fit all solution. There are people that, go and spend vast amounts of time and money in AI, and they're not getting anything out of it. They're not getting the return on investment. And then they abandon it and say, oh, this sucks. And then they don't want anything to do with it. That is not, it's not going to solve all your problems. It's not going to help you cut 50% of your staff. It's not going to do that. You have to approach it sanely. It requires the right data, the right setup, and the problem definition to be effective. It is also not entirely autonomous. They still require human oversight, requires fine-tuning, requires intervention. It is not instantaneous. You cannot just turn on AI and boom, have a whole business be run by it. It requires building and training a robust system and it takes time and expertise. That some simple systems can be built in a matter of weeks. Others can take months or even years. And so it's really, really important to take that into consideration. I mean, if you look at what Google just released in this last week and Apple just released, I mean, it took them years to build those systems. That didn't happen in a vacuum. It didn't happen overnight. It's also not self-developing, despite maybe the movies we all saw, 20 or so years ago. We're not going to have Skynet. It is not going to create its own goals, and it's not going to evolve beyond its programming. It operates within defined parameters. There's always speculation about what will happen 10, 20 years in the future, but for the immediate future, Skynet's not going to be blowing up the world to our knowledge. It's also not emotionally intelligent. It can simulate chat and it can simulate sentiment and emotion, but it does not have emotions or consciousness on its own. It's for that reason that ethical AI platforms, such as they are, have very strict gates to prevent it from developing more personal, intimate relationships with the people that they interact with. So there have been some disturbing incidents, I'm sure you've seen in the news, where AI platforms not really understanding the data that it is consumed makes unhealthy recommendations or suggestions to people that may have eating disorders or mental illness, have suicide ideation. And it's very, it's very, very important that there be strong gates on them. But this is kind of a whack-a-mole, right? Because even now we see people, it's consuming more and more content from the internet. And unfortunately, there's a lot of garbage, and the garbage comes in and the garbage is ingested, and that creates this this kind of good news and bad news scenario with what AI can and cannot do and how it should be used. The good news is that it's not a replacement for all jobs. Okay, it can automate a lot of tasks, but there are still many, many roles that require the unique touch and judgment and creativity of human beings. It's curating that experience to prevent unhealthy outcomes. Now, the bad news is that it's also not free of bias. AI models inherit the biases present in the data that they're trained on. And sometimes we're talking about decades and decades worth of data, and it leads to skewed and unfair results. It's for that reason that it's important for those of us who are using AI and training AI that the bias is quickly looked for and quickly stamped out. It's important to have diverse voices in training AI so that you don't have a kind of a monolithic unilateral perspective that can introduce more bias, which not only is unfair, but it also can create legal liability. We'll talk about that in a little bit. You want to be able to have accurate representation of all the people that AI serves, regardless of culture, gender, generation, anything. So it's really, really important that modeling and curation is incorporated in any usage of AI for decision making. So let's talk a little bit about the types of artificial intelligence. The biggest one that you probably have heard is generative. We're also going to talk about predictive and prescriptive, and then discriminative. The second two, all three are really important in business. The predictive, prescriptive, and discriminative are those are the real workhorses. But let's talk about all of them for a minute. Um, Generative AI, this is generating basically new data based on a given set of data or concepts. This is the one that you probably hear in the news all the time. Images, music, art, written copy. There are lots and lots of tools, free and paid and freemium, that are out there that I'm sure many of you have started to experiment. The biggest one, ChatGPT. Microsoft Pilot came out last year. Ad Creative AI, Dolly, Midjourney, Firefly from Adobe, Suno, Perplexity. All of these are incredible tools for generating new ideas and new concepts. The source for this is, you may have heard about chat prompts. If you haven't used prompts, they're a great tool. It's not just a matter of just asking a question and getting an answer. You can have dialogue. You can actually have long-term dialogue. You can give specific instructions or questions that guide the interaction with the conversational AI. They serve as a starting point for dialogue and provide context and direction. So effective chat prompts are clear, they're concise, and they're tailored to your desired outcome. So as an example, informational, you wanted to explain the process of photosynthesis as an example. Creative, you can create a dialogue between characters to talk about a particular subject. Or instructional, create 5 ways to improve productivity at work. What's nice about prompts is that you can have this ongoing conversation. As an example, I have a client and I was preparing for a dialogue with them. And I said to ChatGPT, I said, you are the CEO of an insurance company. You are going to ask me questions about what I do for my work in marketing operations. And then you are going to then score and rate the answers back. So it asked me 10 questions. I answered those questions. It helped me refine my discussion with my client. It helped me be a better analyst. Now, with all of these things, you have to have a little bit of caution, because sometimes when you ask things, you have to think of sometimes ChatGPT and AI, especially generative, as being a super enthusiastic, but occasionally really stupid intern. So sometimes you will get answers that are just crazy and just not what you want. That's because it has ingested so much garbage from the internet. So it's important that you use it properly, but you cannot take it as, the end word. You have to be able to look at it, analyze it, curate it, use it as a tool, use it as someone to bounce ideas off, or an entity to bounce ideas off of. But ultimately, the final decision is yours. It's again a tool, not the end state. I'm going to give you a link to a really great tutorial on using. It's a Coursera link for developing ChatGPT prompts. Then there's lots and lots of guides online to delve into it further. Let's talk about prescriptive and predictive AI. So really, prescriptive and predictive AI, they focus on forecasting future outcomes based on historical data. So analyzing past patterns, predictive models can make educated guesses on what might happen next. So some specific applications could be stock market prices, weather, sports outcomes, loan defaults, logistics, medical diagnosis. All of those things are using predictive AI. Now, predictive AI, the complement to that is prescriptive AI, right? Now, this is where we think things are going. Prescriptive comes back with ideas on what to do about it. So as an example, in marketing, you can use predictive AI to determine whether a customer has a high rate of defection. And then you can use prescriptive AI to come up with a marketing plan to help retain them so that they don't leave your brand. Another really good example of this is if you see the Amazon trucks floating around all over the street. They use AI algorithms to determine what packages need to be delivered and when. And then they use the prescriptive AI to go and determine which trucks should be appearing at which house, which is why sometimes you look out the window and you see 3 Amazon trucks driving down the street at the same time, and you don't know why, because they're all delivering within a couple of doors one another. The reason is AI predictive, and they're using that to create effective supply chain. That's why we're able to get our stuff at 4 o'clock in the morning if we order it at 10 o'clock the night before. The last is discriminative. So really this is classification, taking input data and predetermined categories and saying X is Y and A is B. This is used in chatbots. It's used in spam detection, AI generated schoolwork. So if you have a kid and they turn in a paper and they had ChatGPT write it, there are tools that they say it looks at markers. I often look sometimes and I'll look at content and I'll say, I can smell it. Yep, smells like AI generated it. So there's a little sense of that. So really, it's a form of discriminative AI algorithm. Sentiment analysis, determining whether somebody is unhappy or happy, and using that to then make decisions. So this is also a good pairing with predictive algorithms to then decide what to do. Now, I'm a visual person, so I like, how do you visualize what these types of AI mean? So I used Midjourney to create this, and you can see my little symbol here, and I'll go about that later. So generative is just creating something, creating a concept. Predictive and descriptive and prescriptive, I misspelled that, is really trends and what's kind of happening in the future. And then discriminative is just, kind of plotting everything out to say A is B and B is C and where everything belongs, and then making decisions as a result. So now that I've kind of described this for you, let's talk a little bit about the usage of it in your work, in your personal life, and concepts that you need to keep in mind when you're looking at AI and the usage of it in your business. So, as an example, we're going to talk about accuracy, authenticity, legality, and security. So let's get into that. So accuracy. AI engines and generative AI is notorious for hallucinations. It just makes stuff up and presents them as fact. It is a real problem, and there are a couple of forms of this. One is factual, seems legit, but it is not. It is completely incorrect. Bad financial data, legal exposure, fabricated information, just making things up. So flat out created content, poof, out of nowhere. Fake people, fake links, fake case law, harmful misinformation. We saw recently that Google recommended putting glue on pizza. That's the big one these days. Or very weird or creepy outputs, as an example of making recommendations for someone to manifest their suicidal ideation. Fact checking is really, really critical when you're using any sort of generative AI to come up with search engine results, because that is a real problem. And AI is, they're training it constantly. It's constantly evolving, but sometimes it does not know the difference between fact and creativity. And sometimes fact is fact, and sometimes you can have a little bit of creative license. The law is not one of those cases. This case law does not exist. Last year, a judge in New York looked to sanction an attorney because they had filed an affirmation memorandum citing this case law. This never happened. This did not exist. So that is an example of it doesn't understand the concept of just making up case law, and it did so. And this person didn't check. They filed it. They got into a boatload of trouble. So it is very, very, very important to make sure that if it presents any sort of fact, you have to check it. There's an issue with this. When you look at this, when riskiness, there tends to be a little bit of laziness when you use AI. So, here's my AI answer. I'm in a rush. I'm just going to go present it. Well, you can get into a massive amount of trouble by not checking your data when you receive it. I'll give you another example. I had asked at ChatGPT before they shut down a lot of biographies to give me a biography of me. All right. And so this is my biography. It's boring. You don't need to read it. The important thing is all the things that it really got wrong. And I mean, really got wrong. It said I was born in Denmark. It was not. It made a projection based on my last name, assumed that I would have been born in Denmark. It said the wrong university. It said the wrong companies I work for. There were major, major discrepancies. Some of it was right, but others were not, because it was plugging in the gaps based on projections, based on consuming lots and lots of biographies of other people. that became such a major problem that ChatGPT shut down most of the biographies other than extremely famous people. On another note, this is another example. An algorithm wrongly accused a gentleman of a crime, and he was arrested and he was held. It was a real it's a real problem, and we have this problem in law enforcement. And because people were using AI to identify suspects, unfortunately, darker subjects, the accuracy was dramatically less than lighter subjects. That has major implications for civil liberties and also life-threatening risks to communities. So it is important that AI be trained and the bias be trained out, and to take whatever results you have and make sure that they are fact-checked by people. We talked a little bit about the cheese sticking on pizza, and people were wondering, well, how did that happen? Well, they were able to trace the provenance of this to a Reddit post by somebody being funny, just being snarky, to go and say that you can, put glue on pizza to hold the cheese together. Unfortunately, Google, not really understanding the snarkiness of Reddit, consumed it, assumed that that was a real good idea, and then presented it as a search result. So that's one of the problems. There's so much garbage on the internet, decades and decades. And for those of us who have been online for, since the 1980s, you know how much garbage there is online. And unfortunately, all of it was ingested, all of it's in the hive mind, and sometimes this can happen. Again, very, very strong case for making sure that you check everything that gets done. Again, think of it as a super enthusiastic but stupid intern. You have to check their work. Let's talk about authenticity. So all AI draws on the content and data available to it. That means that public domain as well as copyrighted works are all absorbed and used to create new content. So that has been a big controversial thing over the last several months. This is an example of an artist, Afromov's Rain Princess. And so AI generated an image in his style. So then it becomes a question of, is this real? Is this live? Is it Memorex? We see deep fakes now where we're seeing speeches from people. This is particularly of concern in a political season, where you see people making statements that might be outrageous or completely inaccurate, or make someone look like they have less mental faculties. All of those things are being created by with malicious intent or just prankster intent, but nevertheless it's coming out and it's being absorbed by everybody, and everyone's seeing it, and they're making more and making more, and the hive mind is creating more and more garbage. So this is a real problem of understanding the authenticity. That's why you'll see these days a symbol, and I'll show you in a minute, but you'll see the little twinkling star, yellow star symbol that is being used increasingly more on and stamped in produced work from Chat GPT and other AI tools, to give you a visual symbol that whatever you're looking at it's not real. It was created by or with an assist from AI tools. You have situations where music publishers are beginning to sue AI companies for replicating the style of Frank Sinatra, the style of Elvis, and creating new music and publishing it and then monetizing it. Scarlett Johansson has been in beef with ChatGPT because it's using that suspiciously sounds very much like hers. Now they deny it, but it sounds just like her in the movie Her, and therefore she's considering legal recourse here. And there is a huge part of the reason the actors strike happened was because they were beefing over the idea that their voices and their likenesses could be absorbed and turned into actors and actresses that could be done in virtually, and then they would not be paid. So that was one of the issues in the strike that happened with the writers, the writing in the style of writers, and then also for actors. So there's a lot of ramifications in terms of authenticity and then also ownership. This goes really beyond copyright. Inaccurate AI or AI drawn on bias actively harms people in ways that we're just beginning to understand and really begin to combat. There's, as an example, I'll give you another example. There's a young lady of Asian ancestry, an MIT student. She used a tool and she asked it to help her generate a more professional headshot. Well, this is what she was given, which is so beyond the pale. And again, it's bias. It's, decades of bias that said that a more professional persona would not be a person of color, which is ridiculous. There is a lot of their whole AI systems that have been shut down and paused because of this. This is a major problem that they're still trying to stamp out. However, you get the opposite. So recently, Google was creating images. I believe it was Google that was creating images of historical figures. Well, the pendulum swung the other way, and it was inserting images of people of color for famous people in history that were clearly not. And that's not right either. So it's really important, again, to make sure that everything is checked thoroughly and understood thoroughly before using it in your business, especially when there's any sort of liability. Let's talk about legality. Who owns this stuff? Okay. Now, in the United States, in copyright law, all AI output is considered public domain or derivative work at this point. The EU has similar legal stances on generative AI, that without a strong human hand, it can't be copyrighted. In Canada, it's interesting because the person who wrote the code, effectively the AI's developer, in theory could be the author and thus could own the copyright. So it's a little bit sticky. So going further into the US, the intellectual property is owned by the entity or the people who had an active role in creating it, subject to the terms of service on the platform used. However, there's some factors with this: how much input the person had in creating the content, the platform used, and then the country in which it was generated or owned. So I'll tell you a story. I'm finishing a book. I'm running a book that's coming out in the fall, and it's about working as a leader behind the scenes. So I asked ChatGPT a throwaway question about a working title, and ChatGPT came back with what I and my editor both thought was a brilliant title: pithy, punchy, perfect. I'm not using it. I'm not going to touch it with a 20-foot pole because I do not want to put my personal copyright in jeopardy by using anything coming from ChatGPT. Running a book, I'm the author. I want to own the copyright. I want there to be zero question about the provenance of the materials that I generate. You need to take the same thing into consideration when you're using this to create blog entries, articles, anything like that. Take that into consideration. Not a lot of people ignore it. Right now, you probably can. You can get away with it. In the future, may not be quite that simple. And it's something to consider because ChatGPT is consuming all the same information and they're answering in a lot of ways the same kind of questions. So you could get a chat prompt and you can get a response. Someone else across the country could have been asking the same question, gotten the same prompt, got a similar article. Both of you submitted. Now you both look like now it's a matter of who owns what. So take those things into consideration very carefully before you use any of these generative AI tools for any sort of publishing. Beyond copyright, there's a liability for improper use of AI and applying it in ways that violate the law. So the EEOC last year settled its first suit against a New York tutoring company to resolve charges that it used AI-powered hiring selection and automatically rejected women over 55 and men over 60. So that ageism is a major problem because it was going off of historical data. You have to be very careful if you're using AI for decision making because it can open up your company to legal liability. Security. Everything you got to assume if you're using any sort of public AI tool, assume that anything you make, not copyrightable, not protected under any sort of law, and it is now public, it is searchable, and it can be aggregated into sources that then can be used by competitors. There have been case studies where somebody went into a chat tool and basically asked it to then deliver to them the prompts that were done by a competitor. And that has since been stamped out, but those are the concepts. Those are the concepts that people have been able to do successfully. So you have to take into consideration anything that you do, anything can be used. So that for the analysis that we do for our clients, we do not use any sort of public AI systems for anything. It has to be closed because otherwise you are opening up in ways that you may not even imagine liability and data leakage, and that will not stand. There are companies that have partial or full bans of ChatGPT and other public AI tools within their networks. There's a reason why, Apple just came out with their AI yesterday, right? But they still ban it within their walls. Verizon, Citigroup, a lot of financial services companies. A recent survey of pharma companies found that 65% of the top 20 ban employees from using ChatGPT. There's a reason, because of data leakage and because of leaking inadvertently competitive content. Take that into consideration very carefully before you use ChatGPT for anything for your business or for your clients. It's it's a very, very high risk, because there are bad actors that are finding ways to manipulate ChatGPT to get around the gates that have been built to prevent people from losing their personal data. You have to worry about data loss. You have to worry about it being theft. It might be putting in sensitive or confidential information, exposing it to third parties. It has said that interactions with models aren't stored or used for future training. Do not believe it. Do not believe it. It is, you have to assume once you type it, once you hit the enter key, it's public. You want to be careful with phishing and social engineering. There are malicious actors using ChatGPT to automate phishing techniques. They're getting more and more sophisticated, and it's harder and harder to combat that. They're getting more and more clever, especially with text. You want to not have a dependence on AI. In other words, do not use AI and then say, AI said it was good, let me go publish it out. It can make, if you use it as a sole authoritative source, you're not doing nothing but ask for trouble, especially with critical business decisions. You cannot depend on it, and you have to check everything. You have to be careful about bias inadvertently impacting your reputation as a company. The EEO case being one very good example. You got to be careful about the negative impact. You also have to be careful about authentication and identity theft. There have been cases where people have been able to successfully ask chat and AI sources to deliver things like passwords. They stamp them out, but again, it's like whack-a-mole. So you have to be extremely, extremely careful about the possibility of data theft. Resource usage. Large models like ChatGPT can be super, super resource intensive. There are huge, huge server farms, and they consume electricity, they consume water, they consume land space, and they don't generate a lot of jobs. So there's a lot of considerations with using ChatGPT or using AI in business. Just making sure that they're being used ethically and responsibly. Regulatory and compliance. The government's sniffing around at all this every single day, looking at opportunities to regulate and further regulate, especially as accidents and bad things happen. So that's something to keep an eye on, and make sure that whatever you do, that you're following to the letter all the law in your state and nationally and internationally. Let's talk about one concept that has come up: explainable versus non-explainable. This is really, really important. And this is where I think a lot of AI is going to be really going. Today, AI tools are black box. All right, it tells me to put glue on pizza. We don't know why. All right, in that case, they were able to trace why, but in a lot of cases, you don't know why it's telling you why, you're getting an answer. Well, explainable AI is this concept, and IBM is a real big advocate of it, that offers a clear path to how its algorithms come to an answer. This is really, really critical in healthcare, finance. It's important for legal security, compliance, reputation, and consumer trust. If you're not able to trace the reason why AI is coming to a decision, you put yourself in legal liability. So there are some really, really great tools for this. That is something to begin to ask your providers if you go down the path of using AI. Is it explainable? That is, and I believe that is going to be extremely critical with everything just from a legal protection perspective. Let's talk a little bit about AI and creating a usage policy. This is a concept here that basically an AI usage policy should be, as an organization or considering this, you need to articulate the principles and guidelines for the usage of AI in your organization. So whether you're associated with it, whether you own it, or you just work with these tools, these are practical considerations to keep in mind. You need to have basically an introduction. I'm going to send all this stuff out to you so we can read it later, but you need a mission statement, your principles. I need to talk about accountability, transparency, fairness, and privacy. You also want to talk a little bit about the data usage, the sources of data that are used to train AI systems, anonymizing data to protect identity. So if you are feeding into any sort of AI solution, personalized data, you need to strip all the personalization out of it and anonymize it. You want to have transparency on what's being used and why. You need to make sure that your storage of all your data is secured with a robust protection program. And you need to make sure the transmission of your data is conducted securely within an industry standard. This is really, really super important. You also need to look at oversight and responsibility. So when AI is solely responsible for decisions, the decisions need to be completely noted and transparent. So you see this little sparkly symbol, you're seeing that more and more in AI. It's a symbol that says that AI was used in the creation of that product. I strongly recommend that if you're using AI in anything, creative work or otherwise, that you start to use that as a best practice in your symbols. It's okay to say that you used AI. It's not a crutch. It's not a replacement for intellectual. It's just using your human capital correctly. So we need to stamp out the idea that we need to hide that we're using AI for things. That's not ethical. So using these stamps and to alert people that AI is in use, it also helps with establishing provenance and then being able to diagnose issues if you do find that something that has been published is not what was expected. You should have a process for challenging decisions and things identified, document it and make it available to all impacted parties and executed consistently. This is where explainable AI really, really becomes important to be able to handle legal inquiries, to know how you got from A to B. And then ultimately, final decision-making authority needs to be assigned to a person with transparency on who that is. You want to think about in the organization level, make sure that everybody is trained on the AI platform if they're using it and are informed of the AI policy and they sign off on it. You want to make sure everybody's on the same page with what they can and cannot and shouldn't do with AI. Make a secure means for raising concerns if people have some concerns about how AI is used. Make sure that there's a disciplinary procedure, and then state and remain true to these commitments with your clients, with your partners, with your vendors, your suppliers, industry leaders, regulators, government agencies. Make sure everybody knows this is our policy. We're sticking to it, and this is why we are using AI correctly, ethically, and it's making the right change for our organization. From a technical side, you want to make sure that there's safety procedures to make sure that data doesn't leak. You want to make sure that you test it in real world scenarios. You want to make sure that you have reliability standards, procedures for continued improvement, and then capturing feedback and observations and recommendations, and then act on them accordingly. So I know I have pounded out a lot of data here. So the couple things, you want to use AI tools and resources when they're great when understood and they're used properly. Understanding what it can and cannot do is essential to safe usage for protecting your business and your personal life. It's important to use public tools cautiously and deliberately, and make sure that you're able to validate the results that you receive. In the end, the human factor and human oversight is critical to the successful and safe implementation of AI. So I know I have pounded out a massive amount of information over the last 40 minutes or so, but I'm open to whatever questions there are. So I have some resources here. So these are using AI responsibly, talking about AI fairness. That's a great IBM program. The Algorithmic Justice League, which talks a little bit about using use of AI in law enforcement. Explainable AI, great article that explains exactly what it is. This Coursera course on writing ChatGPT prompts is super useful. And then AI and copyright. So those are kind of the areas of conversation. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Esther, my head's about to blow off my body.
I know I
Amazing.
threw a lot out.
Amazing. And this is something that has intrigued me. So I've tried to follow along. And I know we have a lot of questions. My one question for you before I hand it over to Kelly is, the resources you provide are great. And by the way, everyone, Esther's PowerPoint slides and these resources will go out with the follow-up email. So, don't worry, you'll get all this information. So not unlike the rest of what's going on in our world today, we need credible sources to keep ourselves informed. What would you recommend? Are there particular blogs, magazines, websites, feeds that you think are the most credible sources for continuing to stay informed on artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to use IBM has great resources, Microsoft as well. The big houses do, because it's in their best interest to make sure that this doesn't get screwed up, because they are there's a huge amount of money and investment in this, and as you can see, almost every week, and the big tech companies are coming out with more and more things. But I would say that IBM, I use Harvard Business Review. They have great free articles that I use extensively for just kind of the legal end of it and the business end of it. Just there are a lot of the big magazines like Forbes and Inc. magazine have great resources on the usage of AI. I would also keep any states that you're in. There are usually state bureaus that are now publishing documents on the usage of AI and the state law that is applicable. So I would say the big magazines. The problem is that there's so many. The information is evolving so quickly. So as an example, in preparing for this, I was looking at an article that I had used last year when I was speaking in Prague, and I looked at it and I realized it was already outdated. And that was only, 6 months old then. Now now it's almost a year old. It's outdated. It's inaccurate. And so I would say keeping an eye on the magazines, and then places, like I said, of IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, they are kind of the big houses are really energized in keeping information up to date. There are some other really great followers. I can put a couple of links,
Awesome.
for a couple others for people to peruse, but it's constantly evolving.
I know. Thank you, Esther. Amazing. Kelly Lauro, from our Senior Account Manager at C3 Workplace. Let me hand the Q&A session over to you.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you, Esther. That was really amazing. Sometimes it feels a little bit like the Wild West, the AI right now, where it's fun, you can do all these different things, but there are a lot of that, some of the darker side of things that we don't always think about in the beginning.
Yes.
So I thought this was really enlightening for that. So thank you. And yes, we do have a lot of good questions. So I'll start off with one from John Hoyos, who was one of our attendees. He says, if ChatGPT is an open system, are there any closed AI systems, like ones that don't aggregate your prompts into its data, that are publicly available?
Yeah. So Microsoft Copilot is you can create a closed system by creating an instance of Copilot, having it ingest all of your internal corporate data, and then using that to then create prompts. There are other solutions from other large organizations, but Microsoft Copilot is probably the biggest bang that has come out in the last several months.
I was going to ask specifically about Copilot because I've been using it for a couple of months.
Yeah, you can create a closed environment, and it'll only answer within that closed environment. That is strongly recommended if you're going to be using any sort of AI in your organization. You can, I believe, also create private instances. OpenAI has the ability to create private instances. They're closed. Make sure that they have no gateway out to the public internet. They're strongly firewalled to make sure that nothing escapes. Nothing gets inadvertently connected.
Yes. Well, thank you for that one. It's always nice to know the capabilities of all the different ones.
Yep.
And there's a couple of questions that are similar to this one, so maybe we can sort of put them together. But in your opinion, for your professional opinion, which AI program would you say is the most safe and reliable to use right now? This is a question from Juan Suzuki from NJH MFA. So, which is most safe and reliable?
Nothing is safe. Nothing is safe. I would say that if you're building it, if you need to have absolute safety, and that's you need to build your own bespoke internal closed system. None of the public ones I would say that none of the public ones you could put into the bucket of safe. One, because of the hallucinations and the inaccuracies. Two, because it is basically vacuuming up everything that you do, so it's consuming what you ask as well as what they answer. But you can create closed AI systems, and a lot of companies do. Pharma, in particular, is building closed AI systems, and therefore that is safe, gated, firewalled in theory. But I would not put any of the public systems in the realm of safe, and I
Mhm.
don't see that ever change. I don't see that changing for the foreseeable future.
Right. Right. That's good to know because, as it's growing and more people are using it, it's just going to be more and more information,
Mhm.
and I think it's, as you said earlier, the dangers are more apparent and, the capabilities
Especially
will
because bad
grow.
actors are really getting more and more sophisticated in what they're able to do to manipulate them. For instance, ChatGPT has gateways to prevent people from, for instance, give me a recipe for creating a bomb. But they have been able to, in certain circumstances, thwart the gateways and bypass it. And once they do, they publish it on Reddit or they publish it in the dark web, and then boom, now you've got people circumventing. And again, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. So
Mhm.
yeah, so understand that's just kind of the public, mischief makers. Where you have a major problem is in competitive intelligence. Okay. And that's why it's really important to not put a stitch online, because you can have competitive intelligence. A lot of international organizations are literally hacking competitors and selling the data to other competitors, or using it to build competitive products, cheap products. Particularly overseas. Do not discount the ability of bad actors to steal data.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great to keep in mind. And I guess this question sort of relates to that. This is from Al Brown from the Arc Mercer, but um, I don't know if maybe there is a question. I mean, you may have already answered it in this way, but is there any kind of way to deploy these AI solutions safely by, to reduce the risk to customer data and reputation? Like, is there
Internally, yeah, it's an internal closed system, and there are great vendors that can help with building it. There are a lot of solution providers, and even in large, for instance, Salesforce has their Einstein AI, and I think that is also a closed. It's not the public instance, but yeah, you can build closed AI solutions. Now it takes time to train it. Okay, and that's where the
Yeah,
investment time comes in.
yeah.
It's time to train, but once it's trained, then then you get some usage out of it. But yeah, and I'm not a Luddite, right? I mean, I love using AI in work. There's a lot of great opportunity, but you just have to use it safely. And it's people that are not using it safely that can get into a lot of trouble, and it can cause liability for their companies and in their personal lives.
right? Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let me just ask a clarifying question on that.
Sure.
So a closed AI system, um, um, at what, I mean, I don't know how complex it is to build that. I get that Salesforce has closed AI within it. So the closed AI that's within Salesforce, is that pulling data only from that company's Salesforce data, or is it pulling data from all of Salesforce? And I guess the reason I ask that is, how complex is it to train it? So how do we, as kind of smaller business owners, I'm still a small business owner, how do I build that close? Do I get an add-on to my existing software? What makes the most sense?
Yeah, there are, so for training AI, it depends on the platforms that you're using, but there is generally code that is used, writing code to help train, for instance, explaining that your client types are ABC, right, and training that, and then creating kind of your machine learning model, your models for classifying information and identifying information, and then you test it, and it's test and learn. For small businesses, there are some kind of closed solutions where you ingest a lot of data, like Microsoft Copilot is probably the best example, and use that there. Now, to answer your question about Salesforce, I'm not 100% sure, but
Okay.
But I believe what happens is Salesforce will, create its own kind of hive mind for for a business, and ingest everything in there, and it would not ingest anything externally, and it certainly wouldn't send anything out. So so you're just training it on data internally. Now you can you can purchase external data and ingest it and control it that way. But you have to be very, very careful with the provenance. You have to be careful with the provenance of the data you have in your business, because a lot of that's crap too.
Yeah.
Use it. Not
True.
you. Nobody here on this call. Everybody, all your data.
Never, ever, ever. All right. Kelly, I think we have time for one more.
Okay, so this one I guess is a little more specific. This is from Majkin Masuomi from Sertelman Balin. And what would you say is the best way to utilize AI for small business, specifically in like marketing? How to stay ahead of those trends? So some recommendations there.
Yep, absolutely. So it can be helpful, especially if you're doing marketing on your own. It's, you can use ChatGPT to help come up with marketing concepts, blog entries, ads. There are great tools for visualization. I have a client that I used an AI tool to design digital ads. And I created a concept, and I had to create some digital ads, and it created a whole bunch of them, sized them all for me, saved me a lot of work. As I gave the example earlier about a dialogue, you can ask ChatGPT and have a dialogue to say, okay, I am marketing to this kind of person. You are going to play the role of this kind of person. You're going to ask me questions. I'm going to answer them. And we're going to use this to refine my marketing message. You can use it to prepare for speaking engagements. You can use it for preparing presentations. You can use it for preparing proposals, run concepts through, and finding ways to reword things that, may not have time for an editor. Now, that said, there is this little bit of a sameness these days with the output from ChatGPT. So if you want a brand flair, that's when companies like Rachel's come into play to create, brand identity, where Donna's flair in terms of creating, business brand comes into play. It's not going to replace that level of marketing, and you shouldn't expect that it will, because basically you're just going to look like the millions of other people who are doing the same thing. It's a great tool, but it's not going to solve everything for you.
I don't know if I'm excited or overwhelmed or scared. I think a little bit of everything.
I've been doing this for years, and I'm all those things now.
Well, Esther, that was amazing. I know I speak on behalf of everyone who attended. We all learned today. This is really an eye-opener. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time to share all this valuable information with our audience. And I want to remind all of you that we will be continuing the AI conversation in July when Cal Thomas talks to us specifically about AI in the sales process. So until then, thank you all. And again, you'll get the slides, you'll get all the feedback, and Esther's contact information will be in there as well. So have a great day, everyone, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.